Hey everybody, it's Crystal, and I am continuing my testing with the Google Pixels camera to see how good it actually is, because Google says it has the best smartphone camera ever. And what better way to test this than to put it head to head with the highly praised cameras of the Galaxy S7. But before we get into that, I dressed up my phones here with some D brand skins. Got that marble skin here and the pink carbon, and if you don't like these color and textures, there are so many other ones, so go check that out in the link in the description. So let's get to it. Alright, so first up, let's test out the biggest camera feature of the new Google Pixel, its dynamic range capabilities. Now the first thing that jumps out is how well the Pixel exposes the sky, while the S7 struggles a bit, making it appear mostly white. However, the S7 does expose me standing in the foreground better. I'm a little brighter, which is nice. And the S7 is also a much more detailed picture, thanks to its optical image stabilization getting a steady shot. Now in terms of colors, the S7 appears a little cooler, and the Pixel is a little warmer, with the Pixel also having a little bit more vibrance. But it's tough to decide which is better. What do you guys think? Leave a comment below and let me know. But for this one, I think my favorite is a Pixel with its extra colors and beautiful sky, even if it's a little darker. Okay, still testing that dynamic range that Google praises. Let's do an extreme shot pointing directly at the sun and be standing right in front of it. Now, I didn't set a focus point for either of these, and they look pretty much identical in the viewfinder, but after the picture was taken, the Pixel's HDR Plus mode kicked in and really made a beautiful shot. Now, in situations like this, it seems that the S7 does the opposite as the previous picture, making it a priority to expose the sky properly rather than the subject. The Pixel's HDR Plus mode exposed the sky pretty well, but not as well as the S7. We have a bit more details in the clouds. However, the subjects, like me and my pumpkin friend, are a little brighter, and you can really see this if we take a look at my boots and the pumpkins near it. Now, both look great, but I think the Pixel managed to balance the highlights and shadows a little better here. So HDR Plus sounds like an amazing feature to have with the Pixel, and it really is, but sometimes you have situations like this where it becomes a little bit overkill. Now the Galaxy S7 looks much more natural, and even though some parts are overexposed, like Kim's and Gabby's face, the fence in the back, and buildings, in a photo like this, it doesn't hurt the image at all. In fact, the Pixel's attempt to crush those highlights to make them not overexposed really hurts its image in my opinion, and creating some very unflattering colors on skin. So here, the Galaxy S7's more classic HDR creates a more appealing image. Okay, now let's take a look at a situation where high dynamic range doesn't really come into play. Both images look really good, almost identical. The colors on the S7 seem to be ever so slightly more vibrant, and the overall picture is a bit darker with more contrast. Now if we zoom in, we can see just how much sharper the S7 is compared to the Pixel, and once again thanks to the S7's optical image stabilization. It's really not that much of a difference here as we're in outdoor lighting, but it's noticeable enough to make me wonder how the Pixel will perform to the S7 in low light. So here I give a slight edge to the Galaxy S7. Now, I kept trying to get shots that didn't have any high dynamic range situations, but in almost every shot, the Pixel's HDR Plus finds a way to bring down the highlights to create an overall darker image than the S7's, but with much more colors. And of course, once again, we can see the blue sky better on the Pixel, but even if we ignore that, the frog himself being a little darker allows for more textures and colors to show. With the S7 being brighter though, you do see some more information in the background near the fence, but the Pixel does a much better overall job here. So you're probably seeing a theme by now. Every time you put a Pixel photo next to a Galaxy S7 photo, the S7's highlights will be a little bit brighter, almost clipping, while the Pixel crushes those highlights to keep its true color and texture details. You can see that with this pumpkin right here, and you can also see that when taking a look at those peppers there. And yeah, sometimes this creates a better looking photo with the Pixel, and sometimes not. But it seems that most of the time you can count on this HDR Plus mode creating pictures a little more appealing than the S7. The Pixel does have a tendency to crush those blacks though, so you will lose some information in the shadows, but most of the time this doesn't hurt the overall image too much, so here I like the Pixel once again. Okay, so let's move into low light shots, and remember we're dealing with optical image stabilization here on the S7 for more steady, longer exposure shots, and none with the Pixel. So with that in mind, if we zoom in, we can see the difference in sharpness, but the Pixel doesn't fall too far behind. I mean, it's close enough that when zoomed out, we can't even tell. In fact, the Pixel almost appears to create an illusion of a photo with more detail with this punched up contrast, which makes the edges of objects very defined. This is one area where the Pixel's extra contrast with darker blacks make for a better photo. And if we look towards the wall of the restaurant, you can see how the S7 struggles trying to expose that light bulb along with the blue light strip above, losing a lot of its color. So overall, the S7's lack of contrast in colors really hurt it here. So in this shot, I was trying to see if that lack of optical image stabilization would hurt the Pixel in low light. Here we have a statue with some writing on it, and before we zoom in to read those words, I do think that both phones are doing really great, but I can already see how much more vibrant the colors are on the Pixel over the S7, especially the stores in the background. I mean, there's red, white, and blue flags in the windows that the S7 pretty much displays as black and white. But now let's zoom in onto the text on the statue, and you can see that the S7 naturally captured the detail of the text better without much post-processing sharpening, and the Pixel seems to be a little blurry. But once again, the HDR Plus mode does a great job at defining the edges with its own way of sharpening, and just based on the overall image alone, the Pixel is definitely my favorite. I mean, the colors are very vibrant and much more present than the S7's, and edges of things like signs and leaves are much more apparent. Now let's take a look at Mr. Krabs showing off his ladies, and this was in a really dark room of my house, and I'm really impressed at how well both of these phones did. The Pixel's a little darker with more contrast, but those colors are much more vibrant over the Galaxy S7's, and the S7's picture also has much more grain in it too. And if we zoom in, you can definitely see the extra sharpness in the S7's here, but still, from far away, the lack of noise and addition of vibrant colors on the Pixel make it a winner. When it comes to selfies, it's a battle between the S7's 5-megapixel sensor and the Pixel's 8-megapixel sensor. But what's probably more important here is the angle of the lens. You can see much more with the S7, which is nice for fitting a bunch of friends in the shot or showing where you're at, but the Pixel does also have a wide-angle lens, just not as much as the S7's, but it is enough. The Galaxy S7 is a lot brighter than the Pixel's, overexposing some areas on my hat and face, and the Pixel's HDR Plus mode lowers these highlights so you don't lose any details on my face or hat, but it really does crush the blacks, taking details away from my hair. But the colors do have a bit more vibrancy. Now zooming in, we'll see how those extra 3 megapixels in the Pixel really help bring out details over the S7, and overall, I'll have to pick the Pixel here. In low light, quality takes a nosedive on both phones, with the Pixel becoming pretty grainy. There's not much grain in the S7's photo, but that's probably due to the crazy post-processing denoising going on that really softens the image, creating a very airbrushed look with no details. So once again, I'm gonna have to say the Pixel wins here. Okay, so let's do a 4K video test, and there's two things to look for when it comes to video: steadiness of the shot and quality of the image. So we know the Galaxy S7 has optical image stabilization to create a very naturally smooth shot, but the Pixel does have a video stabilization mode called electronic image stabilization, and surprisingly, here the Pixel actually ends up creating the smoother shot. It's pretty incredible. But since it is electronic and trying to lock onto subjects for stabilization, when I pan around, it does create some annoying jerky shots. As for quality though, I think the Pixel is doing a little better with the colors. It's a little warmer and slightly more vibrant, and dynamic range is also much better than the S7's, especially here where Gabby, Kim, and Dan are barely visible. I didn't think the Pixel would stand a chance here, but I actually think it's the winner here. Wow, so Google said this has the best smartphone camera ever, and in the majority of the shots, I did prefer it over the S7's image. So it very well could be the best smartphone camera ever, but it really all comes down to preference. So I want to know what you guys think. Please let me know in the comments below, and stay tuned for more camera comparisons against the Google Pixel. And if you didn't catch the Google Pixel against the iPhone 7, go check that out. I'll link that up here or in the description below. Stay tuned for the full review of the Pixel and the Pixel XL, bunch of other fun stuff, so subscribe, stay tuned. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys later.